be remembering what we have learned during the last few classes. We have been looking at some of the important mitigation and adaptation means for resisting climate change. And before that, we were looking at the biodiversity and climate change. As a part of that, that is the biodiversity and climate change, we have a couple of more topics in the syllabus, which I would like to cover now. And I hope you will come to that now. In this one, we will look at the animal adaptation mainly, not plant adaptation. Plant adaptation to some extent we have seen, and animal adaptation is more important for you as wildlife biology students, I think. So we will be looking more into that. Now, one thing that we should all know is that the ecosystems are changing due to climate change. All ecosystems are affected, whether it is on the land, whether it is on the water, whether it is on the ocean. Everything is changing. So let us look at a quotation which was taken by the UNFCCC. During the course of this century, the resilience of many ecosystems, what is resilience, I hope you know, that is the ability to withstand. The resilience of many ecosystems, their ability to adapt naturally, is likely to be exceeded by an unprecedented combination of change in climate and in other global change drivers, especially land use change and overexploitation. So you should first know that we are not only dealing with the climate change, although our main syllabus is with regard to climate change. Along with the climate change, two other important drivers they have pointed out. That is also working against the biodiversity, that is land use change. That means we are changing the land, the use of the land. We convert many of the land for urbanization. We convert many land for agriculture. We convert land for many other recreation purposes, tourism. All these things are land use changes. So that is also happening along with the climate change. So if greenhouse gas emissions and other changes continue at or above current rates, so the resilience is going to be severely threatened when all these drivers, global change drivers, are acting together. By 2100, ecosystems will be exposed to atmospheric CO2 levels substantially higher than in the past 650,000 years. And global temperatures at least among the highest as those experienced in the past 740,000 years. So you look at the change that is going to happen to our globe in this particular century itself. It is something which we have never seen before. You know, we are already seeing such things in COVID. You know, so it is something that the world has never faced before. That is everything shut down and everything not working, and this kind of a situation. So the predictions of climate change is also not going to be much different. That is what I am assuming. This will alter the structure, reduce biodiversity, and perturb functioning of most ecosystems and compromise the services they currently provide. So it is going to be a terrible situation. Yeah? This will alter the structure, reduce the biodiversity, and perturb functioning of most ecosystems. I have told you before what are ecosystem services before and how the biodiversity is important, and the entire functioning of the ecosystem could be derailed. And they are not going to give the same services that they have given so far. This is what it is predicted. Okay, 4 broad ecological responses can be identified due to climate change. We will try to classify things and study that so that you get a better idea. What are these 4 broad ecological responses? Major geographical changes. We are going to get major geographical change. It is explained like this: expansion of boreal forest onto tundra. Boreal forests are more on the extreme temperate areas like Canada and all that, you know. Then forest onto tundra. Shrubland expansion onto some grassland. Expansion of the shrubland into some grassland. So this is major geographical changes. Then major compositional changes caused by broad climatic shifts. What are the compositional change? Wet to dry forest, or vice versa, as it is predicted for our Western Ghats. In the Western Ghats, we have predicted from dry forest to wet forest. This is due to the increase in rainfall after 2030, and arid grassland to desertification in many places. Changing pH levels in the sea, because acidity level is increasing, so pH levels are decreasing, you know that. So this is major compositional changes of the biodiversity according to that. Now, major changes in disturbance patterns. Lot of disturbances are occurring. What are they? More fires, more droughts, and more floods, natural calamities. It is these calamities which will increase the disturbance patterns of the biodiversity. Then species losses due to mistiming, competition from new species within an ecosystem, and direct stress. What is that? Species losses due to mistiming, competition from new species within an ecosystem, and direct stress. Now, I have told you about many invasive species which were never here, but coming from some other continents, and they actually disturb the native species. So species loss is occurring. We have many examples. The African mushy, for example, in our freshwaters, you know, which have really killed many of the native species of fish. And there are several other introductions which have not happened, which we are not even aware. Now, what are the most threatened species? In general, the most threatened habitats and species are those without anywhere to go. You see what is the pathetic condition of many species. They cannot go to another, they cannot migrate and escape this climate change phenomenon. What are they? They include mountaintop communities. There are some communities which are living on the mountaintop. Where will they go? They can only go to the sky, isn't it? So it is almost impossible. So they will just disappear when the temperature is increasing. They are on the mountaintop because due to elevation, there is always a decrease in temperature. Say, for example, we have got the Anamudi in Kerala and Uttakamand. There they are at the mountaintop. There are many communities which are living there, you know. Maybe all kinds of things. Mammals would be there, insects would be there, birds would be there, all kinds of amphibians are there, all kinds of things, you know. They like to have a very low temperature. So when that is not there, they disappear. That is it. Species living in isolated habitat fragments, which are there. Say, for example, many island species, species which are living on the island. They will only go into the sea if there is a sea level rise. This is the thing. It is including island species as well as in isolated habitats in the mainland also. There are many such isolated habitats, those caught by rising sea levels without space to migrate inland. There can be many species on the coastal area which cannot migrate anywhere. This is a problem. That is another type of species which are very, very threatened and vulnerable. Now, in this map, what you are looking at is the global hotspots of rare plant species. Plant species are also there, and it has been identified. Now, what you should look at here is that many hundreds of hotspots. In the meantime, I would like to know whether you know what is a hotspot. Yeah, hotspot is a place where the biodiversity is very high, and at the same time, they are threatened also. Western Ghats here, it is actually a hotspot, and so they have identified some of the very specific hotspots even in the Western Ghats, and in many other places, Himalayas. So again, they have identified very important hotspots there. So you will find it everywhere, such hotspots in the Central America, Panama and all these areas, but the Amazon is here, and that is all full of hotspots. So everywhere you will find these hotspots, and there are many rare plant species, and you should also know, along with the plants, there are animals also in these hotspots. So they are all vulnerable and threatened. Now, regarding species distribution and composition, species distribution is determined by temperature, rainfall, geographical barriers, and other ecological factors. If you look into these, the different ecosystems of the earth, you will find that certain species are restricted to certain areas, or they are distributed only in certain areas. What is the reason for it? It is determined by temperature, rainfall, geographical barriers, and other ecological factors. There are many microclimatic requirements which are needed. They specifically need certain microclimate requirements. For example, if you go into the forest or even into the natural vegetation, you will find there are many small insects, amphibians, and many other species, which are living in certain very restricted habitats. And if you analyze that, you will see that the microclimate of that habit, of that area, is actually making that species to come there. Is it not? Even the ants, you will find, in certain areas only. Why? Because they have got some temperature, rainfall, geographical systems which is actually congenial to them. That is why they are actually frequenting that place. Okay, I hope you got that point. Many ecological factors are there, such as underlying geological formations that will be largely unaffected by climate change. There are certain areas which are not going to be affected by climate change. So many species are going to be distributed there. Now, let us see how this distribution is going to be changed by climate change. Look at this particular map. It is the annual isotherm map of the world. Now, what is this isotherm? What is an isotherm? Actually, it is an imaginary line. Imaginary lines actually connecting areas with similar temperature. Understood, I hope. So, for example, this is an isotherm having around, on this axis, it is made the equatorial degrees, the latitude degrees. For example, equator is at 0 degrees and India is lying between somewhere around 7 degree and somewhere around 25 degrees or so. So that is actually the latitude of India. Now, you will find that, say for example, 20 degrees is here for this isotherm. And you will find that there are places in Central America with 20 degrees, in Northern Africa, and almost in northern part of Himalayas, and in China. And so this is an isotherm. And there are such a similar isotherm. We go from here, equator to the temperature, the isotherms are decreasing. The temperature is decreasing, and to the south also it is decreasing. So where temperature and rainfall are the main limiting factors to a species. So that is actually the controlling factors, limiting factors, species distribution. We can anticipate distribution maps to change accordingly in a climate change situation. So some particular species which is living in the tropics, for example, at the equatorial area in India, if it prefers a temperature of similar degree, say let us assume that this temperature is around 28 degrees for this isotherm. Okay, now if it is at 28 degrees, when the climate change is going to occur, what is going to happen? This may increase to, this isotherm may increase to say 31 degree or a little bit even more as predicted. So where will it get the 28 degree? It has to migrate to the north, or it has to migrate to the south from the equatorial area. Understood? So this is how the migration is going to happen. So temperature and rainfall also they will be looking for. And they may not be able to get the same rainfall which they were getting here, because this is a monsoonal area and not any other feature which is actually controlling the rainfall in this particular area. So something from the Western Ghats, if they may try to migrate looking for the temperature, but they may not get the rainfall, because say for example, this one may be looking for the temperature and going to Rajasthan, where the rainfall is less than 500 mm a year, from 3,000, 4,000 millimeter rainfall in Western Ghats. Understood? So even such a migration, depending upon the isotherm, it is happening now to a great extent, but in future that situation will become worse, because the temperature increase is going to happen and rainfall pattern may change. So even this particular migration itself is a big problem. Many things could disperse. I will give you examples later. Now, the temperature increase due to climate change is responsible for the poleward and upward range expansion of several insect species, and for changes in the seasonal phenology, leading to faster development and higher feeding rates. So the temperature increase will actually promote poleward, both the poles, South Pole and North Pole. 2/3 of 35 butterfly species, this is a case, 2/3 of 35 butterfly species, actually it is actually an outcome of a research, assessed in Europe, shifted their ranges northwards by 35 to 240 kilometers. So they changed their frequency almost up to 240 kilometers in Europe. The insects show high performance and low mortality due to the absence of their main natural enemies in their new distribution areas and the presence of many usual or potential host species. So many of them were at an advantage. Say for example, when they are migrating from European countries again to the poleward, looking for a lower temperature, their advantage was the high performance and low mortality, slower death. Why? Because their natural enemies also did not migrate with them. Here they had many natural enemies like many birds, which did not migrate with them forward. So they performed better. You should know that this is also the reason for many new pests and diseases in many of the countries. Many are coming from other side and they don't have any predators. Say many of the insects in our plants or in our agriculture are actually controlled by the climate as well as many predators like birds. Birds will be controlling and taking away, eating away a lot of worms and other pests, which are detrimental to the agricultural crops. And those birds may not be there, the right kind of birds may not be there to prey on them. So this is the problem. Okay, this is again another case study, a very good research which has been done in UK, I think, by a lady called Parmesan. And it was published in Nature in 1996 because it is one of the very good studies with regard to the butterfly migration. This is called Edith's checker spot. That's the name of the butterfly, Euphitrias editha. Now, what you should know here is that it is actually the study is conducted in the United States, and here you can see that the violet colored things, they are actually the normal June. What is it? This is actually the violet ones are the extinct butterflies, and the green ones are which are thriving. So what we have to hear is that most of these butterflies were originally here, and many have actually perished. You can see a lot of violet color here. And many have migrated and successful. Now, even after reaching to the North Canada, where it is colder than in the US, you can see that many are perishing because they did not get the right kind of climate, whereas some others have really survived. Because there can be false springs also. Say, false springs means that suddenly in winter, a day will, a couple of days will come when the temperature goes up and the entire thing, everything, the flowers start springing up, but suddenly the winter sets in again. So what happened is that many of these insects will perish in such a situation. This is the problem. And even so, even after reaching there, the threat of fall springs are there. Now, fall springs and fall summers, all these things are going to be there in climate change. It is predicted. So the southwards also the similar thing, but those which went to south, there are, you see more of them got extinct compared to the north. So this is there because the temperature was much higher here, and those which migrated from there. So this is a very good case study of a butterfly which is migrated and to the north and the south. Now, there is another big problem with the migrations, that is the changing food supply. In the wild, nobody is going to supply food like we supply to the domesticated animals, our cows and buffaloes, So these things will have to, for example, these are Arctic reindeers. They are called caribou and reindeer. Actually, both are almost the same in parts of boreal region of the north. It is actually in Canadian areas, is consistent with the predicted climate change impacts on their food supplies. So the changing food supply of wildlife species will also change species distribution, stimulating some populations while depressing others. So the reindeers which migrated to the Arctic regions, what happened was that they migrated, 4.7 million migrated in mid-1990s, and when the population was checked in 2018, that is nearly after 25-30 years, the population decreased to 2.1 million. It is a 56% reduction in the reindeer population which migrated in the boreal area. So you can see, and the reason was not because of anything to do with the climate. They could survive in the cold temperature, but as I told you, just like rainfall, the food supply can be also very important factor. The rainfall need not be there, so some of the species will perish. And apart from that, the food supply, the right kind of food that they have to eat may not be there, and so they will perish. So looking for climate, you go there, and finally you don't find the right kind of food. So this is a problem. So this is going to affect the population of many animals and insects, etc. Now, another one is the human-wildlife conflicts. You are very well aware of it, especially those who are studying in Kerala. You know very well, what is the impact of human-wildlife. Every day it is happening. If you open the TV, you will find all this. Even today, I found that somewhere in Kerala, the wild boar actually got into a house, inside a house, and then damaged everything inside that house. And finally, the house owner could bolt the door with the wild boar inside his house. And finally, they called forest people, and forest people wanted to save this wild boar and then remove them to the forest. But you see, all the farmers around that place, they gathered together and demonstrated and said that the two wild boar which entered the house should be shot, to be killed. And then only they agreed. Finally, they called somebody to shoot the wild boar, and both were shot and then removed. So this is a very serious problem, especially in many of the tropical countries. Increasing human population densities and the encroachment of human settlements and activities into wildlife habitats have made conflict situation more frequent in the last few decades. This is an observation by FAO. The wildlife conflicts, the human-wildlife conflicts are increasing every day, especially in tropical countries like India. One critical impact of these changes is the threat to connectivity between wildlife populations. Now, one of the reasons is that, see, there is so much of fragmentation occurring into many of these forest areas. So what happens is that when these animals are trying to cross from one forest area to another, they have to come in between. They will have to meet with the farmland. So naturally, when they see the farmland, they find very good food there, and so naturally they try to feed on the things. And then the conflict comes with the farmers. So this is one of the reasons. And then you will also know that the warmer temperatures reduce plant and vegetation productivity in semi-arid environments, and wildlife in these areas usually enter into competition with the domestic livestock for both food and water. Now, it is not warmer temperatures which is always having a problem. Say, for us, it is mainly, the conflict is mainly because the wildlife population is increasing in our forest. And at the same time, they do not have enough food to eat in the forest. So naturally, their feeding area, they are trying to expand. And when they are expanding it, naturally, they are coming into our farmland. So naturally, it is a big threat to the farmers now. Most of these wild animals like monkeys, wild boar, elephants, and even tigers. I think the last week only a tiger was caught in Wayanad. And it was caged, and then probably they are now releasing it back to the forest, and they may come out again because there is not enough food in the forest. This is our main problem in Kerala. And one of the farmers in Wayanad was telling me a year ago when I came for a meeting there, with regard to this. He was telling that why the wild boar population is increasing. It is because the fox population, the fox, which is actually preying on the wild boar babies, their population is decreasing because Wayanad has now a lot of eucalypt plantations. That is his observation. The wild fox population is decreasing, so they are not able to prey on the wild boar babies. So naturally the population of this wild boar is increasing and causing a big problem to the farmers. So there is so much of a connection between all these things. That is, the population of other animals are also sometimes important. So, I mean, for example, the fox will not create that much of problem like the wild boar, at least to the agriculture. They may be, they may be troublesome to domesticated animals. That is true. So, I mean, everything has to be in that ecological equilibrium. Then only things will go. And if you have the climate change and increasing temperatures and all that, there is a lot of problem going into with the distribution of many of these animals, and conflicts will increase. Now, another big problem is the wildfire impacts. I have told you that one impact of climate change is the increasing temperature. Increasing temperature means the chance of fire is increasing. Say, for example, we had very severe fire during the last couple of years, one in Australia and another in United States, and third one in Amazon area, that is in the Central America. Now, what is the result, you know? Millions and millions of hectares of forest have burned down in this area. And we do not know how much of it will regenerate. This is a serious problem. And along with that, you should know, it has resulted in the loss of huge amount of biodiversity. All kinds of animals, birds, and other creatures. Everything got destroyed by fire. This happened just in the last couple of years. You have seen the Australian fire, you know, which was raging last year. And this is actually one such incident where the Australian koala, it is actually the national animal of Australia, you know, apart from kangaroo. This is Australian koala who lost its habitat in Australian wildfire in 2019, and somebody is feeding, the forest worker is actually feeding it with water, because this is a very slow moving animal. It cannot move very fast, you know, when the fire is coming. And you know what is its food? It is actually taking eucalypt leaves. They eat only eucalypt leaves, and so they stick to eucalypts. And if the eucalypts are all getting burned, naturally they don't have the food also nearby. So they try to move, and during this fire, if they try to move, they are in big danger. So the effects of wildfires on local wildlife can be severe. Slow moving animals are the highest risk of mortality from flames and smoke. Escaping the fire is only the first step to survival. If habitat changes mean that displaced animals can no longer find food, compete for territory, or access shelter, they will die of starvation and predation. They may not get the food, so they die, or they may also get predated by other animals, because there will be other animals who are also looking for the food because of the fire. So these animals can easily become prey to them. So this is the problem of wildfire and due to climate change also. Now, another one which we have seen is the increase in the number of diseases due to climate change. A large number of new diseases, new vectors, all these are coming into us, you know, and it is causing diseases even to human beings. This is analyzing that. There is considerable evidence, for example, that bat-borne viral zoonoses may be affected by climate change, and it has been hypothesized that the SARS coronavirus, Ebola fever, and Nipah encephalitis are all in some way related to direct or indirect changes in the relationship between people and forest-dwelling bats. You see, so many diseases, even our present coronavirus, it is said that it has actually come from pangolin. You know, this is the anteater. You know what is pangolin? If you don't know, you look into some pictures of pangolin. You know, it is there in Kerala also. You will find them kept with other animals in a wet market in China. You see, you must be knowing about wet markets in China. These are nothing but meat shops in China. And you will be surprised. I have been to China and I have seen this thing. What they do is that they sell snakes because they eat snakes. And along with that, they will have different type of animals, including pangolin and several other ones, you know. The tortoises, all these things, they are all kept together in cages. And if a customer comes and they want a pangolin, they will catch hold of it and then give it. And along with, for example, with this pangolin, maybe a rabbit is kept. And if somebody asks for a rabbit, they will give it. Now, what is the problem? See, in the natural situation, this pangolin may never come in contact with a rabbit or a snake. Understand? The natural situation, that is the thing. But we have created an artificial situation where pangolin and this animal is coming into contact. So what is the result? The virus that is here is actually transferred to the rabbit. So even a usual meat-eating person who is not eating pangolin or snake and just a rabbit can get a disease. It is said that the SARS coronavirus has come from pangolin in the wet market of China. There are very good papers on that. You could probably read and then you understand. And bats, Nipah virus, you know, in Kerala, this was located in the bats and it was transmitted. And it caused the death of one nurse, you know, and her photo came in all the newspapers and all that. You know the whole story, how we quarantined the whole thing and then we prevented the disease. Actually, it is a much more deadly disease than coronavirus. Understand? So this is a very serious thing, and it is said that the more than 60% of our contagious diseases are coming from such animals. And unfortunately, the situation in the whole world is now like that. We have started eating or coming in contact with many animals which we never had any contact before. Say in China, if you go, you will find restaurants serving food from all living materials of this earth, which we have never thought of eating. Even insects, even grasshoppers, everything, you know, snakes, different kinds of snake, dogs and bats and whatnot. Everything is there. So this is actually causing a big problem. And so many vectors are there among the animals, which are carrying many diseases, and they are transmitting it to maybe even other animals, which we are commonly eating, like chicken or beef or goat or whatever it is, you know. So this is a serious problem, and in terms of climate change also, this is going to create more and more problem in future. Then another one is the invasive alien species. With the climate change, we know that humans are introducing many alien species, and many alien species are coming into our country without even our knowledge, because the climate is now suitable for them. So this is, for example, an invasive African snail in India, huge snail, which we have never seen before. The Indian snails are so small. So invasive alien species affect many native species and habitats through predation, competition, or foraging. You understand? Affect many species and habitats, and their habitats also, through predation, competition, or foraging. For example, I was telling you about the African mushi, the fish, which actually grows big. So it it was introduced into Kerala for the fish farmers, for their ponds. So naturally, anything would escape into the nature, and finally, these African mushis have eaten away many of our native species of fish. This is what some of my one colleague called Dr. C.P. Shaji. I hope you know him. He has done a lot of research into the fish. He is a very good authority in fish. And he was telling me that many of these things have been destroyed by such introduction of such invasive species of fish into our water. The magnitude of these impacts is apparent when considers that over recent centuries, biological invasions have been the primary cause of species extinction. Many species got extinct because of this kind of invasive species. Invasive species have been identified as a key factor in 54% of all non-extinctions. You see, more than half of the extinctions of animals are caused by these invasive species, and the sole factor in 20% of cases. 20% of the cases, that is the sole factor. Overall, the human-mediated movement of species outside their natural range has been shown to result in a deep impoverishment of species diversity, thus altering the functionality of ecosystems and habitats. So, whether by human help the introductions, or whether by natural things, what is going to happen? It is going to create a lot of extinction of the species. Now, extinction of the species means what? It means new species are going to come and dominate our ecosystems. So the ecosystem is going to change. If the species which were existing got destroyed, new species are coming up. So new conditions are going to survive, and so naturally a changed ecosystem is there, which may be good or which may be bad also. Most of the time it is bad. So this is the problem. Okay, so that is what I would like to tell you about this species distribution and other things, and I will continue with the class into another aspect, that is measures to help wildlife survive climate change. What are the measures by which we can help the wildlife survive climate change? This is another topic in your syllabus which we have to study. For example, how can wildlife management and land use planning adapt to changing conditions with an aim of achieving sustainability? Now, what are the management and land use planning which will help in achieving sustainability of wildlife? The possible tools could be revised laws. What is meant by revised laws? Yeah, we have a lot of laws in the country with regard to wildlife. Say, for example, you know very well the Wildlife Act of 1972. It is this Wildlife Act which is protecting almost all the animals. All the they have categorized them into different categories. So if you are going to kill one of them, which is at the highest category, for example, tiger is at the highest category. If you are going to kill one of them, you are going to be punished and you will have to spend in jail for several years. And then you have got several other animals which come under below that. And according to each of them, your punishment is going to increase. So these are actually the wildlife, the laws which have been, otherwise we had only the British laws before that. So the Wildlife Act of 1972 and the Environment Act of 1986 put together, we have actually revised and protected most of the biodiversity in the country. So this is actually to increase the sustainability. And there are many riders to that. Say, for example, now in Kerala, you know, the law is being revised because now we find that the wild boar has become a pest in the farms. The population has actually exploded for the wild boar. And they are not finding food in the forest, so they are coming out into the farmland and eating away everything or destroying everything. So what the government is now doing is in Kerala is that they are declaring wild boar as a pest. So they are now giving permission in restricted places for shooting them where their disturbance is too much. So there, it is the biodiversity is not really helping in that case. Okay, then regulations. Lot of regulations are there. Like you have to. They are providing electric fence in many places to prevent the elephants from coming from the forest into the farmland. And that. So regulations are there. Policies and management plans. Many policies are set in and management plans. Say, for example, we have wildlife corridors are there. We have got the wildlife parks, national parks, and also the sanctuaries, wildlife sanctuaries. These are all for the management plans. Then long-term monitoring and reporting schemes for indicator species. So research this is probably one of the places where you are going to be involved. Many of you are going to be involved in future. That is long-term monitoring and reporting schemes for indicator species. We have to look into each and every species, how they are performing. Yeah? We have to count their population by different statistical means and then see whether their number is increasing or decreasing, whether there are some diseases which is causing this problem, how much climate change is causing the problem, and how the other disturbances or biological changes that are causing this problem. All this will have to be studied and then reported. Then adaptive management. That is management, which I told you now about adaptation to some extent, but I will be telling more about that, the management to adapt to the situation like a global change or climate change. Transboundary cooperation. This is a very important thing. For example, animals don't know that whether they belong to Kerala or Karnataka or Tamil Nadu, you know, because the Western Ghats is actually going from southern part of India and then going up to Gujarat. And the animals in the Western Ghats, they don't know that which state they belong. They're just moving around, you know. So we need a cooperation between transboundary cooperation between the forest departments of different states so that the problems can be managed and solved. That is a thing. The involvement of local people. This is again a very important thing, you know. As wildlife biology students, I tell you, is very important. It's the most important thing, you know. Say, for example, if you in India, if you ask any farmer or any local person about the forest department, they have only inimical statements about them. What is the reason? Actually, it should not be like that. The forest department should be friendly to the people. because it is the people who should help them to protect the biodiversity and nature. If you are making people enemies, then naturally they are going to be against the environment also. The very case in Kerala, you know about this wild boar itself. I'm telling you, for last so many years, these farmers in all these area, Wayanad, you know, many of you know Wayanad very well, I'm telling you, and Idukki district. In all these places, these farmers have been requesting government and forest department do something about this. That the wild boar population is increasing, we are not able to cultivate, but they didn't do anything. I'm very sorry to say this thing. And the farmers and the local people in all these areas, they are against the forest department because of this. Actually, they should, it is these people, it is a democratic country we are living, you know. It is the people who should be playing an important role in protecting our forest and biodiversity. A forest department cannot do it. The staff is very limited. It is only people from our own people who are managing the forest department. They cannot manage the entire thing. Most places you need to get the cooperation from the people. So the people's cooperation is involvement of local people in protecting biodiversity is very important. You have to educate them. They have to educate them that this biodiversity is important for them. For their agriculture, it is important. For their ecosystem services, it is important. If you give them the correct education, they will cooperate. And if you help them, they know that you are going to help them, they will cooperate. Otherwise, they will be inimical. They will be against the whole thing, and which is something which should happen last. Now, the enforcement of international agreements. Say international agreements are there, it should be enforced. We have to think globally also. Although we have to act locally, we have to think globally. For example, climate change is a global phenomenon, but it is happening in our country, and how we are going to deal with in India or in Kerala or Karnataka or Tamil Nadu. So this is all very important, and understanding this, which way we are going to proceed, that is very important. So I think this gives an introduction to this particular topic, measures to help wildlife survive climate change, which I will be doing tomorrow. So I am going to stop now for the time being. And if you have some questions, I will be happy to answer them. You can unmute and then ask me questions. Nothing?
No, sir, I guess. No questions. Everything is clear, sir.
It was clear. Everything was clear. Okay, good.